Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's happening, man? I hope you guys are doing good today, man. I know that my day is going pretty good, another day sober, man. Another great day to be alive. Is that right? Well, check this out, man. Before we get this video podcast started, if you would, please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers, and for those of us who are still bound down to something that keeps us from moving forward in this toxic life that we live in, man. So if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. All right, well, check this out, man. I hope you guys are doing good, man. It's another day, right? And, during my, process of getting the topic for today, I decided that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about communication. Communication in the sense of, in the context, I guess, of how communication changes for someone who is suffering from addiction, and how that addiction has altered that state of communication. I wanted to. I pulled up a few things on the net, and I just wanted to kind of read you a few of the things that I pulled up, just to kind of get an idea of what it means. You know what I mean, to what it means to communicate, and how an addict, suffers in a sense in that they can't communicate. You know what I mean? A lot of us who struggle with an addiction tend to shut down. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's one of the first things that, as an addict, that takes place is the shutdown of communication. You know what I mean? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these glasses out right quick to get something that I can read with. You know what I'm saying? So check this out. And I took this off the net. This is off of drugabuse.com, and it says, as humans, we crave social interaction with one another. Communication skills have paved the way for meaningful conversations, telling funny jokes, or relaying our heartaches, right? Despite its importance, our ability to communicate is one of the first skills we lose once addiction becomes a factor. As addicts, we often feel isolated, ashamed, while our loved ones are left feeling confused and powerless to help. Talking to one another can be extremely difficult. Because if we don't know how to properly communicate with one another, our conversations can quickly turn to anger or avoidance, depression, even an indifference of some sort. And sometimes, the conversations tend to be one-sided. You know what I mean? And I know that, sometimes you even feel betrayed. Not only the addict, but the family member or the friend or the acquaintance. You know what I mean? And, on the other side of that conversation, you find us that the chemically dependent, we're also frustrated and confused, but for completely different reasons. You know what I mean? It's if we don't know how to properly communicate with one another, our conversations can quickly turn into anger, avoidance, depression, or indifference. And it's hard for addicts to verbalize our feelings. You know what I mean? Drugs can smother our true emotions in many cases. That promise of avoidance is appealing. Instead of dealing with painful news or intense heartache, it's often easier to escape reality by turning to mind-altering substances or alcohol or whatever it is that you're addicted to. You know what I mean? It doesn't just have to be drugs or alcohol. It could be you could have an addiction to shopping, to gambling, to porn, to just different reasons, to eating disorder or not eating, or just different things. So the communication gets torn down. It doesn't matter what you're addicted to. You know what I'm saying? So because all the meanwhile, any of those addictions, no matter what they are, they tend to make people angry. they tend to make people sad. They tend to make people want to avoid things. They sometimes put people in depressed, modes and thinking, selfishly, and then thinking that everybody's after you. You know what I mean? So it's just this whirlwind of misery, man. And unfortunately, for many people that suffer with the disease of addiction, uh, know what I'm talking about, and they lose that sense of communication, especially because uh, an addict tends to migrate uh, to to isolation, and isolation in turn there turns to a lot of different things, and that is one place that you want to uh, really navigate yourself away from. You know what I mean? So. It goes on to say there's a couple of things that say when when effectively communicating, most addicts would want you to know that your love can't save us, number one. And a lot of people think, if you've never been addicted to something, then you'll probably have a hard time understanding this concept. And a lot of times it's, people say, man, you can't quit. Not even for your kids, not even for your wife, not even for yourself. And that's one thing that the disease distorts your mental thought process so bad that it doesn't allow you to see that communication line. You know what I mean? So it takes hold of you so rapidly sometimes that I know myself personally, I remember getting to a point where I didn't even care about myself. You know what I'm saying? I kept doing a lot of whatever, and just because it would have not let me feel the feelings that I would feel otherwise. You know what I mean? And 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 ultimately you even get to that point where you don't care what happens to you, and you don't care what happens to anybody else, or what you're doing to anybody else. And that is the unfortunate part, because it's almost like out of sight, out of mind. If I'm isolated in this little area, in this, little world, this little bubble that I'm in, and if I don't see any of the loved ones and this and that, then it doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, your mind gets distorted like that. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that if an addict was trying to communicate with you and was trying to let you know what they are feeling, that would be one of them. And another one would be, we aren't choosing drugs over you. You know what I mean? Also, we want to quit. And when effectively communicating, a loved one would likely want to say, I acknowledge your addiction, or my anger is not directed toward the disease, or I'm willing to support your recovery. And all of those things are fine, you know what I mean? But when you're the one in the addiction, when you're the one in that darkness, man, it's not. Even though it may look from the outside like, dude, all you gotta do is put it down, bro. You know what I mean? Just put it down. Just stop. Just like Nancy Reagan used to say, just say no. But it's not just that, it's not that easy. You know what I mean? Because if it was, man, everybody would just be in and out. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, not today, man. Tomorrow we'll go for it again. But no, it's not like that, man. And unfortunately, when your communication line breaks down, man, is it tough to get yourself out of a whirlwind of addiction. And that is, I believe, one of the key factors in recovery is gaining back your ability to communicate. And also, there's let me see what it says here. I wanted to read another thing to you, just kind of just to throw this out there also. It says, If an individual has relapsed after a period of recovery, they may not want others to know that they have slipped back into the darkness of addiction, and the person may be fearful of the judgment that is often associated with falling back into addiction. This is where communication is vital in the realm of recovery. The person has to be willing to talk to others about the feelings they are having. When they are experiencing urges and cravings for their drug of choice, the communication can start out slowly, which can start to release pressure. This in turn helps decrease the intensity of urges and cravings and helps avoid the desire to use. And you know what? One of the things that I have personally found in my road of in my journey today of spirituality and recovery is gaining back those communication skills through involving yourself in a community of like-minded people. In other words, when I interact in my peer support groups, when I interact in my faith-based groups, when I interact in my therapy groups, that's where my communication skills start building up. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, if I'm not involved in all these things, that means I'm back in the isolation. And the isolation is like the dead zone. You know what I'm saying? The isolation is like the kryptonite for Superman. You know what I mean? You lose all power, man, when you're in isolation. You know what I mean? So it's very, very vital that you get yourself out there. You know what I'm saying? And just know that, it's hard for some people, especially in their everybody has a different environment. You know what I'm saying? And I know myself in that in a lot of Spanish Mexican families, it's either, they got this saying that say, amárrate los huevos and keep on moving, you know what I mean? And it's not that easy, you know what I mean? In other words, it says, grow some balls and keep moving forward, you know what I mean? And that's the way everybody would like it to be, to man up and move forward. But man, a lot of times it just is not, it's not that easy, you know what I mean? The isolation, man, will bound you down with, 10, 20 different types of handcuffs, you know what I'm saying? And you're there trying to search for different keys to get out of this thing, and it's hard. And one thing that I do know through experience is that involving myself in these different communities and these different groups with like-minded people, and I like to call them these illuminated beings, because I feel that when you're in these rooms of people who are searching recovery, a lot of these people have years of sobriety under their belt, right? So they got this illumination to them, and they're trying to spread a message with the help of what they call their higher power. And your higher power can be whatever you want it to be. Those are the quote unquote the dialect of the rooms, if you want to say that. And ultimately, this is just my personal opinion, that higher power is a spiritual connection. It's a spiritual connection with that divine energy. And that divine energy can be whatever you want it to be. You know what I mean? You can call it God, you can call it Buddha, you can call it Allah, you can call it Yahweh, you can call it whatever you want to. You can call it, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? You can call it Hare Krishna, you can call it whatever you want to, man. But this is one thing, what I do know is that all of those names are different names for one energy. You know what I mean? And how you get to that energy, be my guest. You know what I mean? What I share on my channel is just my road to that energy. And my road to that energy could be your road. You know what I mean? That's why I share the message, man, because, in these rooms, you hear a lot of illuminated and energetic stories that draw you in, that they're giving you this little spark, you know what I'm saying? to spark up your energy, because you have that energy that's here, built up in your heart and soul and your mind, that the divine gave you. You have the power to manipulate your life wherever you want it to go. You know what I mean? And because you have that power, along with the power of free will, man, you can get yourself out of anything. You know what I mean? But here's the kicker, is that you can't do it alone. Okay? That's the kicker right there. The kicker is that you can't do it alone. You know what I mean? You hear it a lot, man, that, where more than one person prays or chants these prayers, the energy levels rise. You know what I mean? And that's what you want, man. You want to be in the community. You want to be in that peer support with all these, like-minded, illuminated, energetic of the divine energy people to keep you going. You know what I mean? To keep your light illuminated. Because as soon as you leave the rooms, your light starts dimming down. So the more that you keep in contact with this energy, with these communities, the longer that your illumination lasts. You know what I mean? I like to say this a lot, is that if I spent every single day when I was in the addiction, if I spent every single day using, well, then I should be able to spend every single day. If I used all that energy in the addiction to use and pick up every day, then I should be able to use the equivalent energy to pick up and communicate and involve myself in this community of the divine energy. You know what I mean? And in turn there, spread it out. You know what I mean? Spread it out, because I'm not the only one who needs it. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that in those rooms is where your communication skills start coming. You know what I'm saying? Because at first, trust me, this is everybody could probably vouch for me on this one, is that anytime you go into these rooms, if you're new, it's silence. You know what I'm saying? You're just there sitting down, listening. You know what I mean? You're not communicating, you're not talking, but you're communicating in the sense you're picking up all these seeds. You know what I'm saying? And that is the thing, is I don't care if you have to go 100 times, man. One of those times that you go, you're going to hear something that's going to resonate with you, that's going to tug that little energy cord of yours and turn it on. And it's going to be like, boom. Once it's on, dude. You know what I'm saying? Once it's on, man. And you're going to, you got to hold on for the ride. You know what I mean? Because the ride can come quick. It could be like one of them roller coasters. As soon as that cord is pulled, boom, it's that fast. You know what I mean? And sometimes it keeps going. The cord could be pulled up here, and it's still this uphill battle, but it's pulled, and you still feel the tug, and you keep going. You know what I mean? That's why they say, don't leave until the miracle happens, my brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? So it just keeps moving like that. So it's different. Everybody has a different frequency, right? Everybody's on a different level of that energy. And when you get up to that, boom, when you get up to that high, intense energy of it, it's amazing. You know what I'm saying? And that's when you start wanting to just overflow this so that you can share it with the world. You know what I mean? Because ultimately that's the goal, you know what I'm saying, in a sense, is to share, to give away what has helped you along the way to get to where you're at. You know what I mean? I would be doing myself a disservice and you guys a disservice if I wouldn't share the stories that have helped me along the way to get to where I'm at today in the spiritual journey. And I got a long way to go still, you know what I mean? But because I'm connected to this divine energy, man, the rides, it can be bumpy at times, but it's a whole lot better with it when I was in the darkness, I can tell you that much. And so when I picked up on that whole communication thing and decided that I want to talk to you about it, I could remember, man. I can remember myself in the early days of the sobriety. I was still in an isolation mode. I didn't want to really get to meetings or involve myself in these communities, but I've been there before, you know what I mean? And I just hadn't found my community yet, you know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that you got to do, man. If you have to swing, you just jump around from one room to the next, it's okay. Because you're involving yourself, you know what I mean? You're getting out there. So pat yourself on the back if you're doing that. And one day you're going to get into into one of these rooms that you're just going to fit right in, you know what I'm saying? You're going to fit right in, and that's going to be your home group. You know what I mean? That's going to be your room, man. You know what I mean? And in that room, when you feel like that about a room, then that's the room where you got to start sharing your story, because somebody needs to hear it in that room. I believe that the divine energy ain't no joke, man. And if he sends you somewhere, you got to acknowledge that, and you got to, do what the energy tells you to do. If you'll feel it, you know what I'm saying? You'll feel it. And I'm real big in my spirituality, man, and the things that I practice, you know what I'm saying? And I believe that the divine energy is a powerful thing to have on your back. You know what I mean? That's the most powerful and that's the best sponsor that you could ever fucking have, man. You know what I mean? Excuse my language. I don't like to cuss a whole lot on my channel, but every now and then one slips out, right? But yeah, dude, I believe that divine energy is the best sponsor you can have, because it'll never let you down. Ever will it let you down. It carries you no matter, even if you relapse, it still got you. And I'm living proof of that. You know what I mean? So, by no means is that a free pass. Don't get me wrong. I hope I didn't interpret that way, but that's not a free pass, my brothers and sisters. So, erase that thought from your head. But anyway, so, communication is a big deal, man. And just know that everybody is not going to communicate on your level. Not everybody is going to see eye to eye with you. You know what I'm saying? So when that happens, you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to make a decision on your own out of your best interest, because the recovery is you, man. You know what I mean? It's all about you right now in the recovery. Whatever is in your best interest to get you through this thing and to keep going. You know what I'm saying? To not, lose that illumination of that energy, man, because, trust me, man, I had to change people, places, and things for me to get to where I'm at today. I'm talking a whole 360-degree change. I had to change where I lived, people I hung out with, people I dated, everything. Everything was a 360 change. And was I upset about it? Yeah, I was upset about it. I was heartbroken about it. I was sad. I was depressed. But what I do know is that we live in a life that is naturally consumed of cycles. You know what I'm saying? We live in cycles. That's our life. And not everything lasts. You know what I mean? We live in a world of impermanence. And I knew that. You know what I'm saying? And that was one of the things that really helped me move forward in leaving the old world behind and coming into this world of spirituality. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to be here where I'm at today. I'm grateful that I'm able to share a message with you, because I'm here and I'm not using. You know what I'm saying? And it feels good. You know what I mean? It feels good to share messages and to help somebody. You know what I mean? And if you would have told me a couple of years back that I would have been doing something like this, I would have laughed at you, because I was knee deep in the world of addiction and the world of darkness of selling drugs and using drugs. You know what I mean? And it's a toxic world out there, man. So all I know is that the spirituality journey and this connection to the divine energy, and that's how I communicate my life today, is through spirituality and the connection to that divinity, man. And that communication works for me in my life. So hopefully maybe somebody gets something of what I said today, and it helps them today in your journey of communication. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's all I got for today, man. I just wanted to throw that out there today to kind of, hopefully it tugs at somebody's heart. Hopefully I help somebody out today. I really do. And yeah, so at this time, if you would, please just hit that subscribe button, give me a comment, shoot a thumbs up, hit the bell. Just know that when you hit that subscribe button, man, it don't cost you a thing. It don't cost you a thing at all, but you know what? You'll be helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSDs, childhood traumatic experiences, trauma, depression, drug addiction, alcoholism, anger issues, sadness, grief, depression, suicidal thoughts, all those things, my friends, because I have dealt with all of those things at one point in time in my life, man, and guess what, man? I know a way out, and my way out could be your way out. So until the next time, man, on When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.